The news that made headlines a couple of days ago was the fact that Newey's transfer to Aston Martin is all but complete. Ferrari were the frontrunner. The Brit had visited Maranello and even held meetings with Ferrari at the Bologna airport. This was a marriage that should have worked, so why did the move fall through? One issue was that Newey had never worked outside the UK in his career, and the idea of catching a 2-hour flight to Maranello didn't appeal to him. While the distance and cultural change could have affected his choices, it wasn't the only reason. Ferrari is still the biggest team in the sport, the only team that has never left the sport, and bringing them back to winning championships would have given him godlike status. Turns out there was more to this story, and the reasons were sinister. Newey tried to hijack Ferrari for himself. It was reported by Italy's biggest motorsport magazine, Autosprint, that Newey made some demands that became problematic for Ferrari to accommodate. But before we get to the bone of contention, we will start with the smaller issues. There were some little inconveniences that Ferrari was open to accepting even if it was not ideal. One of the smaller issues was that Newey didn't want to work full-time. He was only open to working part-time. It would have been quite the coup. A part-time role that would have earned you $100 million over 4 years is one hell of a flex. In an era where employers want staff in the office, while the employees want to work from home, there was always going to be friction. It was reported that even though Fred didn't like this at all, as he would have preferred someone who was hands-on, he still played along and expressly told Newey's entourage that the salary would not be an issue, as Ferrari were willing to match any offer. Normally, it would be the employer that sets the tone of a contract, but we can all agree that Newey has earned his dues and is not your typical employee. His need to work in an advisory capacity is perhaps tied to the fact that he wanted to be closer to home. It would have been ideal for him. You get to run the best team in the sport's history while also enjoying living in a familiar environment in the UK. But Newey continued to squeeze the team and placed even more demands, and here lies our main story for the day. Specifically, Newey wanted to have a veto on the team's hiring. It can be argued that even the president of Ferrari, John Elkann, does not have this sort of power. What it means is that if the team principal scouts an engineer and deems him fit for the job, Newey has the power to stop the hiring, and there is nothing Vasseur can do about it. Quoting Autosprint, they said that he was asking for decision-making powers that were the prerogative of the team principal. To be more precise, Newey wanted the right of veto on the hiring of new engineers, the allocation of roles, and, weirdly enough, he also wanted veto powers for the acceptance of technical partnerships. The last part means that if Ferrari finds a particular supplier for a part, Newey has the right to reject such partners and suggest one of his own liking. This left Frédéric Vasseur in a tight position. The Frenchman is not just a team principal, he also owns a GP2 team that has produced Formula 2 champions like Hülkenberg, Hamilton and Leclerc. What Newey is asking is to essentially strip him of his roles as a team principal. If anyone on the grid would disagree, it certainly would be Vasseur. He was already unsatisfied that Newey wanted to work part-time, and when he made this demand for veto powers, Fred put his foot down and insisted that the collective is way more important than the individual. Aston Martin, on the other hand, were a lot more open to accommodating his demands. Frankly speaking, Lawrence Stroll most likely forced everyone on his payroll to either accept anything Newey wants or leave. It is much easier for that to work since the entire Aston Martin team pretty much answers to one man compared to a more complicated structure at Ferrari. In addition to Newey, Aston Martin has now completed the signing of Enrico, former Ferrari technical director. Ferrari, on the other hand, has shifted grounds and would announce the signing of former Mercedes chief technical officer, Mike Elliott, after the summer break. Some have argued that if Newey wanted the job of the team principal, he should simply ask for it, as lots of teams would have willingly given it to him. But wanting to be the chief technical officer while also effectively rendering the team principal useless is not going to work in a top team. While we might blame the Horner gate for the exodus at Red Bull, it does not necessarily mean that it's all on Horner, as suggested by Verstappen's dad. Maybe the people leaving Red Bull have their own problems as well. It could also be that Newey didn't intend to scrutinise all hirings and partnerships. Maybe he is just interested in the key crop of staff that directly interface with him. He could have wanted all the powers as a just-in-case, and not necessarily to wield them. But we would like to hear all your comments regarding this issue. Do you believe by this veto Newey was asking for too much? This is Front Lockout. Signing off.